So, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to make sure you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, we're good to go. So, last week, just as a quick recap, we started discussing the nodes of fate and as an astrological inquiry. And we had a brief discussion about what actually a lunar node is, um, for anyone who wasn't here. And then we went forward from that and just talked a little bit about how astrologers perceive it as far as the South Node looking or giving us hints as to what it is that we came in this lifetime with from the past. And the North Node is, what our soul is trying to get us to tend toward, to develop, what's skill, as we seek to, as Master DK so eloquently pointed out when talking about the Pisces Virgo axis, which he discussed, balancing these axes, because it's through balancing these energies on an axis that we're able to ascend to a higher state of consciousness. So that's where we ended. We went through the axes for three pairs of signs. Um, Last week, ending with the Gemini Sagittarius axis. So today we're going to pick up where we left off, um, looking at the North Node and South Node and the signs, key things through some of the suggestions and highlights that Pam Gregory has offered. As I said last week, I've attended some classes and with her and her understanding, and also Mary J. Cranmore, and their information has been provided. So we'll go through that briefly today, and we might have some time for discussion. I'll try to move quickly through this. So when we look at the Cancer Capricorn axis, we're looking at two different energies. Um, the Cancer is seen as the archetype of the mother, and Capricorn is the archetype of the father. The archetype of Cancer is the healer, and its positive attributes are seen as being nurturing, protective, but often traditional. The shadow side of Cancer is seen to be clingy, dependent, and insecure. And so we often think about that withdrawing into, the shell that we often think of or visualize when we think about the Cancer personality. Capricorn, on the opposite end of the pole, its archetype is the father, the wise elder, the executive, the advisor, and the CEO. Its positive attributes are being authoritative, professional, and practical. And its shadow side is seen to be stern, rigid, and controlling. If you have a South Node in Cancer, I'm in Capricorn, you have to look at your chart. You'll think in your past life, you may have worked very hard for status and reputation. You may have been a business leader or someone in charge of large projects or organizations. Financial needs were paramount. Usually, work and effort was made for providing for the financial security of the self or the family. There may have been themes of austerity and frugality that you had to deal with as far as tightening of the budget in order for the overall financial security of the family structure. You had probably a strong work ethic. You have a sense of duty and organization, strong, very good organization skills. Um, you have a tendency to lean towards that which is conservative and traditional. Some of the themes of a person who has a South Node in Capricorn is a tremendous sense of responsibility, seeking financial security for oneself and providing it for the family, and also an extreme sense of duty and responsibility. So if you have a South Node in Capricorn, You've come into this life to move towards your North Node in Cancer. With that North Node in Cancer, now the focus is taking away from the material aspects of life, and you shift to the emotional needs, which were often overlooked or had to be set aside with that Capricorn uh, South Node, because there was a need to you had to set that aside to focus on families and financial stability. So your challenge is to become emotionally open and available, ability to nurture the self and nurture others, which is the mother aspect of Cancer. Literally, the North Node in Cancer is also can be nourishing in the sense of preparing a lot of food. So you can see chefs and other uh, things that provide food in the food industry as being associated with that North Node in Cancer. Um, there's a shift to becoming a parent. You become a foster parent or a mentor because it's the mother aspect of being responsible in nurturing others. Um, you will often see people with a Cancer North Node as teachers, particularly of young children, or individuals with special needs, wanting to be inclusive and taking care of all and making sure that all people are provided for. The sense is to make others feel safe and protected. And it's a sensitivity and appreciation of others, of sensitivity in others. So, you're balancing uh, this need for material security with the need of emotional expression. And so that when those two come together, then the axis is balanced, and then you've learned the lesson. So those are the emphases for a South Node in Capricorn and a North Node in Cancer. Now, if you have a South Node in Cancer, you may have come in, with this needing to transmute or deal with these particular issues, a preoccupation with the emotional needs of self and others. You want to help others with their problems. That's an overemphasis. You are naturally emotionally supportive and nurturing, but you're possibly oversensitive to the opinions of others, especially to family members. And so you have to watch that. And you may have been a cook or a caterer or a teacher in your past life. You may have a tendency towards sentimentality and have a strong association with heritage and family. And there is a need, you know, um, in life decision making to have family support. So that's what you came in with. And those are some of the things that that you may need to balance or transmute in this lifetime. With the North Node in Capricorn, your job is to develop ambition and focus. You need to learn how to become the provider, the responsible one. Um, you you have to be able to have the courage to take on big projects and strive towards achievement with confidence in your ability to do so. Status and reputation will become increasingly important, becoming a leader who can handle authority. Usually, you're a leader of an organization, striving to become a key player in world events, seeking financial security, with the intention of being persistent and enduring. So the mother and father aspects, the often we think of in sort of spiritual realm of the mother being sort of the intuitive, aspect, the spiritual aspect, and the father aspect being sort of the world expression or the divine masculine. And so, in many ways, the North Node in Capricorn, South Node in Cancer is to balance those modalities of divine masculine and divine feminine as expressed in the personality. Leo Aquarius axis. The archetype for Leo is the performer and the magician. Its positive aspects are being creative and joyful, though its shadow aspects are often expressed as being seen as being egotistical. The Aquarius type, the archetype is the inventor, the sage, the genius, the humanitarian, and the rebel. Its positive aspects are expressed as independence, visionary, enlightened, and unconventional, though its shadow aspects are seen as being aloof, lost in ideas, robotic, and zealous. If you came in with a South Node in Leo, you are creative and have a lot of individuality. You're perceived as being generous, loving, and warm. But you often may have to deal with the shadows of being ego focused or desiring being the center stage in most things. And of course, there's the Leonian luxurious love of luxurious living and pleasurable comforts. These are issues that you may have to transmute or balance when you come in with a South Node in Leo. Now, if you have a North Node in Aquarius, the call is to operate from the periphery and question current norms. The Leo is very much in the center, but the Aquarius operates from the periphery. You challenge the status quo, reject mainstream views, and we can see so much of Uranus in operation here. You have a humanitarian vision. You seek to promote an ideal. This is where you should be trending in your life expression. A person with a North Node in Aquarius is usually an activist, but it's from a point of being farsighted and visionary. They're usually not expressive or a focus on the individual, but rather the group ideal. And you learn to cultivate an impersonal existence, being one of the group, as opposed to being center stage. And you develop a sense of idealism with a focus on the collective and humanity. So with the North Node in Aquarius, you're learning how you develop that unique gift in Leo. But when you balance it with that North Node in Aquarius, you understand that it has to be for the collective good. It's called your gift is what is called for and of relevance to the community. And so that's what happens when you balance these two axes. If you have a South Node in Aquarius, you may have been on the periphery of society in your past life. You are highly idealistic, perhaps a scientist or innovator in some way. You had a humanitarian focus and often was perceived as a cool intellectual. Aquarians are often seen as the great debaters on an intellectual level, immersed in group activity, the iconoclast, the one who attacks the cherished ideals of society, the one who is the town crier, uh, speaking out against that which is seen not to be of the new or what is the best for the collective. If you have a North Node in Leo, you're required to develop flair and style in your creativity. So you have the innovation and you have the foresight that you may have brought in from your past life, but you're asked to express it in creative ways. You develop a sense of leadership, courage, and confidence, and you can serve as an inspiration for others. So you don't leave the group, but you learn how to be a part of it and yet maintain your own individuality and the specific gift that you might have to share with others. You draw others to you through warmth and generosity. So the what is perceived as the coolness, the high mental or intellectual and personality of Aquarius is now being balanced with the warmth and generosity, the heart-centeredness of Leo. You bring a sense of joy to what you do. Warm exchanges are exchanged for intellectual debates. People with North Node and Leo have a love and enjoyment of children. And it's said that they're often quite successful because they are able to balance the axis and bring a great degree of prosperity through specifically for their children. You're living, you're learning to live from the heart rather than the head. Rather, um, if you had a North Node in Aquarius, the opposite would be true, but always trying to balance these two modalities, the head and the heart. And that's really um, the one of the main themes of that particular axis, nodal axis. And finally, we end up with the Pisces Virgo axis. The Pisces, the archetype is the mystic, the poet, the dreamer, or the romantic. Its positive aspects are that it's imaginative and pathetic. The dreamer, its shadow is it's spacey and escapist. Virgo, the archetype is the mentor or master, the sacred servant. Sacred servant here is really the one who will sacrifice all. That's what we mean by sacred servant, even life itself in service. The cubicle dweller. The positive aspect is it's analytical, humble, service oriented. Uh, when we see the Virgo Pisces axis, I think they say that Pisces is the most egoless of all of the signs, and Virgo is right there next to it as far as humility is concerned, service oriented. It's very emblematic of this axis. The shadow of a Virgo is your anal retentive, repressed, or the martyr. If you have a South Node in Virgo, you have a sense of service. You have humility, but possibly related to an anxiety about self-worth. There's an obsessive tendency around creating order and efficiency. People with South nodes in Virgo have a tendency to have workaholic tendencies and a need for everything to be practical. The question is for a South node in Virgo or a Virgoan, is it practical? There's also an emphasis on personal hygiene and health. They all weigh prominently in your life. And you may have been in your past life a doctor or healer or artisan. The outstanding skills that you bring in as a South Node in Virgo are outstanding skills around detail and a sharp mind. Your North Node in Pisces is asking you, for transcendence, really. It's a oneness of all things over the separate analytical separateness or the compartmentalization that is so prominent in a South Node in Virgo. You're asked to bring your creativity, over the detail orientedness of a Virgo. You came in or you're developing an acute intuition and you have a sensitive energy, not only within other people, but generally with animals or even just energy in general. People with North Node and Pisces are great energy healers. You develop a sense of unconditional love and a connection with the divine. You move from the critical mind, which is so, because the Virgoan is so analytical and that can devolve into a high degree of criticism. You're supposed to move from that to the wisdom of love, which is the North Node is guiding to you. Releasing that criticism once for all and embracing the allness and the perfection of the divine in all things. If you have a South Node in Pisces, you're sensitive. You're probably sensitive physically or psychically and may find it hard to live in the world. People with the South Node in Pisces often prefer to live in places that offer solitude and retreat. That offers sort of a environmental protection for all of that sensitivity. They have a tendency to have great gentleness, sensitivity, and compassion for the suffering of all. In your life or in your past life, you may have experienced too much sacrifice or suffered a great deal in the past. You could have even been incarcerated somewhere. And that would go back to that need to be in a retreat or being separated. People with South Node and Pisces have a great love for animals as you recognize the sanctity of all life, including members of the animal kingdom. And again, I go back to this. You have to watch it because Pisces is the most egoless of all signs, and we're talking about the lower ego um, as far as being self-sacrificing and focusing on the oceanic oneness, the transcendence, the personal self lost in the allness of it all. But if you have a North Node in Virgo, you're asked, it really is a taskmaster that you are being confronted with in this lifetime. You're being asked to ground those ideals and make them a practical use in the service of others. You know, the theme of this axis is practical service. You know, you have to learn how to bring the fluidity and the um, part of that Neptunian energy into more rooted, you know, earth practical way. You're asked to become more discerning and discriminating. You need to develop clear boundaries. People with Pisces, with Neptune very prominent, or who have South Node in in Pisces, sometimes struggle with where do I begin and the other end. There's not clear boundaries. You show up and you sacrifice. That's a sacred servant, the one who's willing to give all, even unto life itself, for their brother or their sister. So you have to learn how to develop clear boundaries. Um, you may have engaged in drugs or substances to achieve a state of bliss in a past life or this one, because Neptune rules Pisces and it's often associated with uh, addictions or substance abuse. Um, you can be drawn to alternative healing modalities, and you have a feeling of being able to draw on the profound knowledge of the ancient wisdom keepers. So, you know, again, it's bringing the ideals and making them practical, bringing them down, in a very grounded way, seventh ray, really, expression in this lifetime. Nutrition and diet can also be an expression in addition to alternative healing of a person with a North Node in Virgo. Virgo rules the intestines, the gut, and the microbiome. So that might be a modality that needs expression as well or can be explored. And people with this particular North Node have a very good um, ability to work with plant medicine because, again, it's working with the earth. And the sacredness of Gaia or the earth and all that she contains. People with a North Node, people who are on this axis, Pisces, Virgo, have a very good sense that the earth itself, um, matter, has within it all the elements needed to heal the physical body. And so they move in a very third way modality towards that healing. That's one of the gifts of this axis when these energies are balanced. So we conclude that. And I wanted to, as I mentioned, the top psychic indicators, top psychic gift indicators for people to look in their chart. I mentioned very briefly about the houses. And so, the 12th house, the collective unconsciousness, the eighth house, the house of Scorpio. So Pisces, the house of Pisces, the house of Scorpio. And then you have the fourth house, which is, also the house of the ancestors, of family connections, that also is very indicative of a psychic gift. So if your moon is in a water sign, Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio, or your moon is in that fourth, eighth, or 12th house, it's very possible that you have psychic gifts. If your Neptune is in the first house, the house of self, third house communication, the eighth house, the house of the hidden wisdom or Scorpio, or the 12th house, that can also indicate psychic gifts. Mercury, if it's in your eighth house or 12th house, that's also an indicator. A lot of people don't associate Mercury with psychic gifts, but if you look at the tarot, Mercury is the magician, and it's known as the manifester. You know, it's the mental manifester. And so, in many ways, Mercury is, for this reason, considered a sign that, psychic gifts can expand through. If your sun is in your eighth house or 12th house, the eighth house is the house of Scorpio. We associate that with the house of the esoteric sciences or occult sciences. And so, you find people who have astrology or placements very prominent in the eighth house, having associations with astrology or tarot card reading or, you know, uh, different sorts of ways or tools that you can use to access the intuition. Pluto is in your first house, or the fourth house, the eighth house, or the 12th house. Remembering Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. It's the dredger. It moves into the unconscious. So, and it's the planet of transformation. And for this reason, if you have Pluto in your first house, again, it's the house of self. And so you can go deeply, deeply into that as an indicator of possible psychic gifts. Fourth house is the house of mediumship. So I mentioned to some people, if you have your um, south node or in the fourth house, for example, then you probably were a medium in a prior lifetime, medium being people who connect to ancestors. If you had your south node in the eighth house, you probably, um, could have been an astrologer, could have been a tarot card reader. There's all these different modalities that people use. And then the 12th house is the house of the shaman, the collective unconscious. That's also a gift, um, a house where you can find those gifts. So, I mean, for me, for example, I have placements in every one of these except for Neptune. My Neptune is in my second house, but it's in Scorpio, which is another placement. And these are just showing you where the energies are. Of course, for any kind of psychic gift and indicators, we talked about working with symbolism, we talked about working with color, we've talked about working with sound. These things have to be developed using the mind, and uh, translating that into an intuition. It takes a bit of work through meditation and other specific training. So with that, I end this presentation and hope that the nodes of the moon have given you some guidance. It was very, very, I know, quick and very basic about what the soul may be trying to express in this lifetime through you. Uh, but once you come from that sort of place of reference, you start to look at a chart in a very different way. And you see that the ascendant or your Chiron or your MC all kind of support you on this journey of spiritual expression and accomplishing and achieving soul purpose. So, brothers and sisters, good journey. And I hope that we all express and achieve that which we've been called to do in this lifetime. And I appreciate so much your time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you very much, Tia, for a brilliant presentation. So clear. You put it in very ordinary terms so that we can all understand. Thank you so much for that. Would it be possible for us to go back to the Aries axis? I think it was from last week, because that's it. Because um, in our natal chart from the um, group's perspective, I think I don't quite remember whether it was North Node or South Node was in Aries and Libra.
The South
Doesn't
Node is in Libra, and the North Node, I think, is in Aries, and it's
right? Can we?
third house. This a
Yeah,
third nine, a third 3-9, yes. hmm
yeah.
and you know, that was the challenge of that. You know, the houses. Well, of course, uh,
Right. Yes, of course.
yeah, of course. We know that Master DK says for disciples that the signs are much more prominent or important than the houses. But in this case, you know, it's good to look at both of them, but that's why I went and had an emphasis on the signs. But we know that the ninth house is the ninth of philosophy. The ninth house is the house of higher wisdom, of philosophy, and higher teaching. And the third house is communication. And so if our south node is in the ninth house and our north node is in Aries in the third house, the the challenge for us is to come out from the group. We learned or we know how to do group work and to work with each other. But the challenge is, how do you move from that structure, that organization, that group that you're in, and express what the new needs to be expressed and how it needs to come through. That's the challenge, you know, because it's a tendency to need or want. It's what Jesus said when he said, "Come out from among them." That's what that axis is asking us to do, you know, because the Libra wants to maintain peace, it wants to maintain balance with the group. But sometimes what is needed, and for us as healers, is going to be a new expression or a different understanding that's going to be required in this coming age. How are we going to evolve, you know, and balance that? How can we express what is unique or what is coming through intuitively and still maintain, you know, a connection, but not have the connection to such a degree that it hampers us or keeps us from doing what we've been called to do, which may be very different, you know, than what the traditional group, that ninth house that we're trying to bring through and express and communicate to the general public, or what has been in the past, you know. Um,
Mm.
that's the challenge, you know. It's we know that when, for example, when we look at our teaching, we speak in a language and understanding that is very specific to us, you know. But Aries, which is, you know, considered the penultimate first ray sign, and I think about Master Moria, you know, he very much in the Agni Yoga books, you know, bids us to meet people where they are, you know, to say it to them where they are. That's that communication. And how do you communicate the wisdom, you know, in a way that's true and very connected to the essence of it, you know, but for a new audience and a new time, you know, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you too. That was wonderful. What you just said is exactly my dilemma. I feel like I live in two worlds, the world of abstract ideas and then the world where I work, which is certainly in the front line of difficulty. And so learning to communicate in a gradual way or a way that will be accepted is my challenge, basically. That you just, you know, what you said is just what I struggle with, how to present things in a way that's meaningful and acceptable, yet not too difficult to fit into everyday life. So I understand and I'm totally with you on that. And thank you for a wonderful presentation. And also, I was watching the one from last week today with Nicole, and it was just amazing what you brought down in very practical terms about the purpose of the group. So thank you for that as well. Very like everyday practical ways of understanding where we're going forward. So love them both. Thank you.
Well, the interesting thing I think about is, you know, a seventh ray age is very much about spirit inhabiting matter. And that's what we're moving into. And I think I remember, you know, two aspects of that. Master DK complimenting Madame Blavatsky um, as being a Libra because she, you know, had the capability of being able to communicate that. And now we as a group facing the same dilemma of how do you bring that forward in a way that is meaningful and to a whole new generation, you know, who are very much being impressed by, you know, this Aquarian energy. So there is a very strong intellectualism that is now circulating the planet, and the debaters, they're not going to accept what you say just because you
Yeah.
said it, you know.
Yes.
And so, um, you know, the whole paradigm of the Piscean sort of master Chela relationship may have to be reassessed, you know, as we move and want to share this, you know, ancient fires that come from the ancient wisdom and bring them to the generation and keep the wisdom flowing and sharing. It is a challenge, you know that, but as a group, we came here willing to take on that challenge. That is what the group soul has asked us to do. So we have to we have to think about that and work towards that.
Yeah. I think sometimes, especially with a Libra, there seems to be an overemphasis on not hurting others, you know, like you said earlier on, keeping the balance, but also keeping the peace. So we don't say things because we don't want to upset the apple cart. But where Libra, where Aries is concerned, you know, it's be blunt, you know, hit people right in the eyes with the truth. So it is quite a challenge because you don't know if you say something which is very, very different to their beliefs, how this is going to be accepted and uh, um, and whether they will react negatively or whether they will react positively. So it is a real challenge for us. So if we slip back into this Libran, all right, then don't worry about it. Let's sweep it under the carpet. and pretend that everything's okay. Well, that's not what our North Node in Aries is asking us.
If I may, yes. First of all, Tia, that was a brilliant presentation, and thank you so much. And if I may, if we are to look at the higher, the more spiritual aspects of the sign of Libra, which ultimately synthesizes or balances all the pairs of opposites, let's think of that as maybe in our south node, as a seed for us to carry forth into the north node of Aries, a new seed. That's what Aries is about. It's about a new dispensation. It's about a new seed thought. It's the primeval idea. It's the creation of a whole new paradigm. So if we are to take what we have been able to synthesize through all of our efforts and love and care for our group, and to try to come to some sort of a balancing factor with what we've done to try to put forth, as Tia says, in a brand new way. Maybe that's something we could all ponder, ways to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge in the sense, as Nicole spoke about, because if you switch it and you make the North Node in Aries and the South, the South Node in Aries and the North Node in Libra, you can also get some insight into this axis, depending upon what is in the past and what is in the future, is we learned or we need to know how to collaborate with other groups and other people, but not at the expense of our own originality. And then you have to have the fearlessness of the Aries, that you may have to go it alone.
Yeah.
And that emphasis comes from a South Node in Libra and a North Node, because I have so much Libra in my chart, and I just know that there's a tendency to be overly adaptive, and it's not. And when we talk about it in this way, of course, there's always the higher expression, but these are things that are almost unconscious, that we have to bring to consciousness and transmute. Because, as I said last week, consciousness really is bringing things into conscious awareness, is where the healing actually occurs. We may intuitively do all of these things because we're on the path and we are regular meditators and we're doing our work, but we have to look at these things from a very conscious perspective and say, what am I doing? And how do I lean into this in a way that I make the most of this lifetime and this expression?
Exactly. And that's why, again, I emphasize that for all of us to ponder in all of our teachings and various ways and means, the higher aspects of both of these nodal signs, so that we can integrate them into that perfect place of balance and utilize the best of the past with the potential of the future. Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe another way of saying it is to introduce these new thoughts and these seeds, as you said, Susie, but couch it in delicate language, in tactfulness, and all these Libran qualities.
Well, adaptability being one of them. And as Tia has said, and it's so true, I think that's one of the major issues that will help us to project more of what this group is all about, is the ability to adapt and step down, transform those lofty thoughts and those beautiful images into areas of absorption into into other, it's going to be a challenge, and it's something I think all groups are going to be facing, all groups similar to us across the world, of which there are thankfully so many. I think all of us are going to be very seventh ray. How wonderful that we're here at this time to try our best to materialize in the very best way we can all of those wonderful, lofty, maybe mentally and astrally, higher astrally, of course, focused thoughts into the etheric, physical, actual parameters of our fellow men.
But I think from a modality of healing and also healing cleavages, that it's really important that we recognize that we are on an evolutionary arc. And so we have to very much deal with the shadow aspects of the personality itself within ourselves. And that is on a very rudimentary level. Those cleavages have to be healed because as we heal ourselves and we purify ourselves, we become more helpful and useful to the group. I think sometimes we rush so quickly into the allness, or into the to oneness, that we don't necessarily address the pieces and the fractured pieces that need to be um, fused and blended and healed together so that they can, that Libra, which is the glyph, you have the bar with the hump over it. That's the balancing is a portal. It's a aspect of consciousness, verticality, that's reached when these two aspects are balanced. So we have to work not only as a group with this particular axis as a group, but also a signal within ourselves. So it's not just what's in your natal chart that you're working on, but it's also this overall theme as a member of the collective or a member of this group that you have to challenge yourself and deal.
Yeah. Ben, you've put the transit chart up in the chat. Did you want to comment on that?
No, I just put it up because we were talking about it at the time.
Oh, right. Okay.
When you brought up.
It confirms that
Right.
our North Node is in Aries and in the third house, and our
Yes,
South
I
Node is
see.
in Libra.
Right. Okay.
Things I was thinking about, though, to think bigger than we think, and to work at full capacity. And in the glamour work that we do, it always starts internally, and everything we do internally is reflected in the world. As within, so without.
Yeah. Well, we've got work ahead of us.
As the first ray would say, boots on the ground, boots on the ground.
Yes. Yes. As you know, I went to my brother's funeral last week, and they are a very, very traditional Catholic family. And I was constantly on edge because, I mean, I didn't know about this not that I didn't know, but at the time I had to be very careful with what I said so that I wouldn't ruffle too many feathers, you know. But I kept on saying to my nieces and nephews, you know, he's gone home, trying to get them away from this idea that he was stuck, you know, 6 foot under. And that was quite a challenge for me to be in that environment, knowing what I know, but then having to bring that to their consciousness that, hey, he's not down there, you know, but he's somewhere else. And that was so difficult
Mhm.
to get them to think differently. So I had to use words such as, no, he's gone home. You know, he's surrounded with his wife and, you know, my mum and that sort of thing to get them away from, well,
Mm.
dad is, you know, dad
Living in
is
two
down
worlds.
there. Yes.
Living in two worlds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's
Mm.
only now that, you know, Tia expressed in these terms this axis that I realized, yes, that's the predicament that we are into. You know, bring these ideas of reincarnation, what happens after life, where do we go, you know, what sort of transformation that the consciousness goes through, and trying to put these or couch these in terms that are familiar to them or to, you know, our surroundings, but without being too confronting.
It might be interesting for us to ponder that very subject, Nicole. I think that's an amazing opportunity for us to share at some point how we have actually done that within each of our own lives and been successful or not.
Yeah. And I
Concrete
bet you,
examples, because I think we
yeah,
all have them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. And I bet you, just like Tia was saying before, you know, we are in these situations, and
Yes.
psychically and
Constantly.
intuitively,
Mm-hmm.
we probably did it without even
Mm-hmm.
recognizing
Yeah.
that's what we were doing.
Yes, but we need to bring it forth even more so for the seventh ray
Yeah.
manifestation. Yeah. And so that might be a real interesting um, topic of conversation for all of us to ponder ways in which each of us have gone through that very experience. Because when you were saying that, I was saying, oh my God, yes, I've been there. Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
Mm,
And how we have dealt with it, either, as I say, successfully or unsuccessfully,
mm,
because
mm.
both of them are going to apply as we try. Yeah.
You,
Well pondered. Yeah.
you
That is,
know,
mm,
as you were talking there, I thought, oh, maybe sometimes we think that we are unsuccessful. But as you said earlier on, you know, it's just little seeds that we plant. Yes,
exactly.
you
Yep.
know, they can be rejected at the time,
Hmm.
but with time, these little seeds will
Mm.
grow.
Yeah. There's even I don't know my Bible references by heart, but there's even a reference to that that Jesus was talking about the different seeds that are planted, some of which grow, some of which do not. Mm,
Mm,
yeah. But we still have to keep scattering them.
yes.
Those of us who are gardeners know that. Mm, yeah.
Yes.
You know, the University of Virginia for the last 50 years has done amazing research on reincarnation and attempts to prove it. And it's actually have worked with young children in their memories of past lives, which are later investigated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And they've done lots of work with NDEs, and it's just so accepted in the medical field that many physicians are now coming to their conferences and bring just regular physicians, not psychiatrists and not psychologists, talking about patients who have had near-death experiences. So there's just a lot of framework and work going on to support, the prior ideas about religion and just wanting to be careful how we say things, that it won't offend people religiously. But there's also this other side that's got an amazing amount of proof and acceptance if that was widespread. And I sometimes will work with people in transition or working with families in transition and talk to them about this research, because it's not wacko and
Yeah.
optimistic. It's real, and they've done amazing work. And I myself had 2 NDEs under the age of 5. So it's very meaningful for me to have people, confirm a lot of this, because at the time I was clueless about what it meant. So yeah,
Mm.
I agree. There's lots of different ways to present things to people, and it's my struggle, and it has been for a while. So
Mm.
yeah. But thank you, everyone. I'm going to have to leave. That was just an amazing presentation. I'm very more knowledgeable, although I'm at the beginning level in my astrology. So I don't feel very insecure, but yeah, I think it was very interesting and helpful today. So
Yes, and the way Tia put it made it so accessible.
you did too, Nicole. Last week's was wonderful too. I have to give you so much credit, both of you, and everybody the week before, Susie and Mady. So thanks a lot. I went up a little bit in my knowledge now. So guys, I'll see
Thank you.
you tomorrow.